Hello there. We've got to take a look at some trigonometry now. We are finally to the point where we'll teach you a little bit about trigonometry. This is section H-3. The trigonometric ratios can be thought of using a mnemonic phrase called SOHCAHTOA. I would memorize that. Write it down, learn how to spell it, because it really will help you not need any of this stuff. You just need that to help you identify what we're looking for. So first of all, let's talk about what the heck trigonometry is about. So in triangles, the angles are related to the lengths of the sides. There is a relationship between the lengths of the sides and their angles. And trigonometry is that study. So we have something called the sine, the cosine, and the tangent. So you will see those on your calculator, on my graphing calculator. You'll see them right here. You'll see a sine, cosine, and tangent button. If you've got a scientific calculator, they're on there as well. They might not be on the front page, depending on what calculator you have, but more than likely they're pretty prominently displayed on your calculator. I also want to show you that sine, cosine, and tangent begin with S, C, and T. And SOHCAHTOA, you'll see, begins with an S, C, and T. So S stands for sine, C stands for cosine, T stands for tangent. So when you look at an angle, and we're going to identify the sine, cosine, and tangent of angle A only. So, and first of all, this is always dealing with right triangles. If you don't have a right triangle, none of this works. But with a right triangle, this is fine. So for a right triangle, let's identify one of the angles, A. We're not ever going to be dealing with the right angle. We're dealing with the two non-right angles. So angle A, we're going to talk about right now. So the ratio of the sine of angle A is the opposite side over the hypotenuse. In this case, the opposite side is A. The hypotenuse is C. So A divided by C would be the sine of angle A. For cosine, the length of the adjacent leg. The adjacent leg is the one that creates the angle. So right here, B over the hypotenuse, which is C. So B over C would be the cosine of angle A. And the tangent of angle A would be the opposite side over the adjacent side. So A over B. Now, let's take a look at this. If you look at the letters, this stands for sine opposite hypotenuse. So this means the sine equals the opposite side over the hypotenuse. This means cosine equals the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And this means tangent equals opposite over adjacent. And there it is. SOHCAHTOA basically tells me all of this information in one little mnemonic phrase. Now, sometimes we know all three sides, but we don't know the angle. And for that, we use what's called the inverse trig functions. And we'll get into finding the inverse sine, the inverse cosine, and the inverse tangent when we look at an example. So this is pretty important stuff. And it's basic, but it's very important that you understand this. It's a right triangle idea. You pick an angle, and then the sine of that angle is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So, for example, if we picked angle B, the sine of angle B would be the opposite beside B over the hypotenuse. It would be B over C. It just depends on which angle you're dealing with. And so there's a look at the notes. Next, we're going to take a look at some examples.